I just thought I'd start with some polls. So, Rona, if you can share the first poll just to kind of find out what everyone's got, cow-wise, what breeds we're using, and just to kind of break the ice a bit and find out. So, just like 30 seconds, what breeds are you mostly using? I think you can choose up to two, and let's find out what's going on here. And then also, there's a question on if you're performance recording. So let me know yes or no answer to get going. So hopefully that poll's appearing for you all. And yeah, if your breeds or cattle aren't on there, stick it. There's another category you can type it in. But let's see what the popular breeds are, and mixes and crosses. What have we got? Angus, Charley, Limmy, Ling, Shorthorn, Stabilizers, Cementals. I think Cementals are going to win here, I think. Oh, maybe not. Right, I'll give you another 10 seconds and then we'll close this down and see what the results are. So I'll do a countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What have we got? Rona, what are these results? Let's share them. So it's frozen on my screen here, but I think, yeah, Cementals are dominant here tonight. So as panelists, we can't vote on this. So as you know, Charley's got his Welsh Black and Angus, so that's why that's not been ticked here just now. But yeah, good to see the range in the room, and also those of you that have been performance recording, those that aren't. So that's handy because the whole point of this webinar is for those that are kind of new to performance recording, to what we should be focusing on with a suckler herd. So we'll just leave that poll now, and then I'll just jump to some slides. So and we'll go from there. So and close that down, Rona. That'd be awesome. So the bit of the theory, right? What is performance recording? I always feel like this question is a wee bit like, define regenerative agriculture, define farming. It can be quite an abstract term. What we're talking about when we're speaking about performance recording for our livestock. Well, I think when I was thinking about this, my colleagues, and the title of the series, data driven decision making, I think this kind of encapsulates it. We can look at definitions from QMS and other big industry bodies, and we can talk about how it's a measure of how an animal grows or is reared within a set time frame. We can think of how performance recording, it's a necessary task to making effective decision making on breeding policy. But ultimately we're measuring something or a collection of metrics to make better decisions to meet our end goals. And so a big part of performance recording is we're using data to meet our end goals. So I suppose the big question we've all got to kind of challenge ourselves at the start of what's my aim for my suckler herd? What's my ultimate goal? Because from that then we'll determine what KPIs I'm going to be looking at, what data I need to look at, and what I should be focusing on, and how I'm going to get there. So we are performance recording for a number of different reasons. I've just thinking about profit, the environment, and health. So thankfully at the minute beef prices have sprung back up recently, which is good to acceptable levels, but we are all facing challenges with the high input costs, and ultimately we've got a lot of things going on that have a big impact on profit. So the more number of live calves we can get off, the more better maternal traits we can have in our cows, the more we can improve our barren rates and make more effective culling decisions, the more efficient herd we're going to have. And I think ultimately, profit, we'd not be in business. We need to make profit. We need to be sustainable. We can't do all these other things, the environmental benefits, have a good flock health, have a good social life as well, if ultimately the business isn't profitable. So number one, why are we recording? Yeah, we need to make profit. Number two, the environment, as an industry, particularly the beef industry, we're under a lot of stress and a lot of push to meet these emission targets on methane and things like that. And so we help ourselves both individually with our own carbon footprint as well as an industry if we're working towards getting a higher calving percentage, having that tighter calving period, 6 to 9 weeks, reducing our age of calving to 24 months for our heifers, and reducing age to slaughter and increasing those daily live weight gains. These are all things which we can work towards, and that will improve our ultimate carbon footprint, ultimately benefiting the environment. And then from a health perspective, by paying closer attention to what's kind of going on with our stock, and maintaining our good health status, by performance recording, we can make more selective decisions, selection decisions, and we can ultimately have better performance as well from them. So again, quite general, but really important that things that of why we're performance recording. So I was thinking in my head about what three things should we be with performance recording for new going in with our suckler herd. What three things should we focus on? You might totally disagree with me on this, but and that's fine. But the more I'm thinking about it, I've kind of narrowed it down to these three things. So age of first calving, percentage of cows calving in the first 3, 6, and 9 weeks. And then a bigger KPI, our herd efficiency percentage, which is ultimately our total calf weight per unit of cow weight. And so I'm just going to quickly go through these details before I hand over to Charlie and Andrea, and they tell us how they do it in practice and what they're focusing on. So age of first calving. So I think the 24-month target most will be aware of. It's really important that we're striving to hit that, because for many reasons it avoids negative impacts on lifetime performance and longevity of that heifer and that cow, and those heifers that calve early in that period of time are most productive and most efficient. So it's an important target which we should be trying to hit, and so I won't ask it today, but hopefully we're trying to be calving 24 months. I mean to say, just as a start, that we're thinking about commercial herds here. We're not thinking about niche markets. These webinars are done for thinking about it from a commercial perspective for commercial herds. So when you see these figures floating about, these are what's been targeted for commercial herds. But ultimately, we rearing heifers is a big cost of business, and we need to look after them. We need to make sure they're getting in calve and early on at that stage. Yeah, we don't want to be calving any earlier than that. It's not a case of how low can you go when it comes to calving. We that can be a detriment to impact on milk production. We can have huge calving difficulties and with not being fully grown. So we're aiming for these heifers to be calving at 85 to 90% of the mature body weight. So something to bear in mind. So first thing, age of first calving, targeting 24 months. Secondly, percentage of cows calving in the first 3, 6 to 9 weeks. So HDB define this as the number of cows and heifers calved in the first 6 weeks as a percentage of the total number of cows and heifers put to the bull. So when we're thinking of our percentage here, we're trying to hit like the kind of 70% to 85% of our calves of our cows calving in this period. Ideally, if we can get 65% in the first 3 weeks, super. But these are the kind of timelines that we should be trying to focus on, and having that tight calving period to be more efficient. Just as a side, I think it's important when we're calculating this figure that you calculate 1 day of the calving period by adding 285 days onto the date the bulls are put in with the cows, including all the cows calved in the next 21 days, plus any that have calved prior to the calculated start of calving. Because if you calculate it from the date the first cow calves, which could be up to 10 days earlier if it had twins, for example, the benchmark figure will be inaccurate, and you can't compare that then within herds and years. So yeah, it's important that herds achieve this target. They'll be fertile, and will be that'll be a demonstration of having fertile cows and bulls if that's the case. But yeah, so what we're targeting percentage wise within the first 3, 6 to 9 weeks Hopefully we're hitting in the first 6 weeks a kind of 70% percentage. And then the last KPI before we go to the walkers is that is a slightly more complicated one, but a really important metric. This is how we really define how good our business is, how good the enterprise is. So, select knowing our KPIs for herd efficiency percentage. So when we wean our calves at 200 days, this is their total live weight gain, their total live weight in total, divided by the total weight of our cows that have been put to the bull, multiplied by 100 to get our percentage. And so we're aiming for a kind of percentage that is ideally kind of around 50%. This is much harder when we've got bigger cows. The old adage, the old rule of thumb was that a suckler cow should be weighing 50% of her body weight at 208. That's quite a big target, but that's we should be ambitious, and we should be trying to push our cows and our systems to this. But yeah, ultimately we need to have the talk. There's always the talk about breeding smaller cows and being efficient. We think of the maintenance costs of larger cows, and I think Charlie might touch on this later on in his presentation. So really important that we think about that. The main gains are we can have a higher stocking rate, we can get more calves off the ground, we're making more money, and it's it's not costing the business so much to rear and keep that cow. So what do we need for the herd efficiency percentage? We need the number of calves weaned from the cows. We need to weigh the calves, the average weight at weaning. We need the number of cows mated, and then we need to weigh our cows as well, the average cow weight at mating. So we're needing to have a set of weigh scales in order to be getting this KPI. So my take-home messages are, first of all, know your end goal. There's no point in getting so invested in data and KPIs and things if we're not knowing what our main objective is, because from then we can select the information we need to focus on, because otherwise, yeah, we can't concentrate, and we can't be efficient, we can't work on the things that are important. And then lastly, to know our KPIs, I've just took out 3 key ones here. I think at the start, don't try and get into too much detail, focus on 3 things and look at that over a period of time. And that way it'll be better for your mental health and the growth of the business and your success. So that's me. Allow me to introduce Charlie and Andrea from Barnside. They really don't need any introduction. I think they've won numerous awards for the success at home, and I'm going to just hand over to them. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and hopefully they will be able to run their presentation, and we look forward to hearing about their system. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much.
Great.
Excellent. Hope you can hear us all right. So my grandfather used to tell us boys, me and my cousins, that there were 3 types of farmer. And there are those that make things happen. There are those that watch things happen. And there are those that wonder what on earth has happened. And to be quite honest, we've been all 3 of these over the years. We've had all sorts of good things, bad things go on and what have you, but we feel very much like of late, in recent years, we've done more of this. We feel like we've been making things happen in general. So hopefully we can share that with you tonight, because we feel we've had some good results of things. We've over a number of years, 4 or 5 years, we managed to take our stocking rate up by 30% through various changes, not just performance recording, but that was a key part of what was going on farm. And that in turn lifted our output per hectare in terms of kilograms of live weight produced by 50%. So big story, I want to share that with you. This is where we farm, Barnside, 600 acres. We run 500 wool shedding ewes, 110 Angus cross and Welsh black Suckler cows. We've got a couple of dogs. We've got a couple of now grown up children, and the 2 of us, a little bit younger than we are today. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a feel for what we are and what have you. This is where we are, for those of you further flung. We're in the foothills of the Lammermuir Hills, quite near the coast, in Berwickshire. Quite low rainfall, 30-inch rainfall, and quite sunny. I believe Dunbar, which is nearby, is the sunniest spot in Scotland. So yeah, not the worst place to be. This is the farm. So you'll see we're lucky enough to have a ring-fenced farm. The two little blue squares, one towards the bottom of the screen, that's the farm steading, and the little one in the middle of the farm area is a set of sheep yards, and we've got facilities there to handle cattle, but only kind of problems or sorting out a little issue. We tend to do the main handlings back at the steading. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a feel for what the place looks like. We run from about 600 feet up to 930 feet. And all told, that is 625 acres. So yeah, and this is what we found. That's not really, no, this just demonstrates one of the big things that's been a big change for us and has involved a lot of performance recording, but actually more perhaps on the pasture side, but obviously growth vaccinating. And the big point here is rotational grazing. So big groups of stock, not this big, obviously, on our sort of scale, but trying to mimic what animals did and still do on the plains of Africa and what have you, moving on, eating out an area very quickly and moving on and leaving a lot of fertility behind them. So about 10 years ago, we launched ourselves into paddock grazing in quite a big way, and we've done a lot of subdivision and what have you in order to drive that system. And that's been a big part of what's helped us change. But without sort of recording what was going on, and in particular growth rates and such like, we wouldn't have known, been able to steer that change very easily and what have you. Another key facet of our system is ruthless genetic selection. So we feel very much that we have to be the wolf, and any passengers in the system have to leave the system. Their progeny aren't kept through. They're identified as such, and they're not kept either. Because in nature, that's how that works. It's the weak and the sick that get taken out by not just wolves, obviously, but predators and what have you. So we're great believers in trying to work with nature in that sense. We do let them rear their young and sort of work their way out of the system at the end of the season. We don't get rid of them straight away, but it's key aspect of the system there. And we set up got the genetics somewhere near right, and that's it. By using that and paddock grazing and what have you, the Suckler herds, 110 cows usually to the bull, around that number, and they will all calve outside from the 1st of April. They're outwintered as well. We'll come to that shortly. But they will calve outside, pretty much left to get on with it. We keep an eye on things, obviously, sort out welfare cases and get things tagged and what have you. But that's what's going on with them. The calves will be kept on mum through until about January when they're weaned, and then they stay on farm until kind of May, June as yearlings, or just slightly older than a year. Steers go to a joint venture to a different farm to be grazed there, and heifers will be sold for breeding or will come into the herd to calve down, to go to the bull and calve down at 2. We've also got 500 wool shedding ewes. This is actually a hog, which we don't lamb hogs anymore, but there we go. But yeah, we've got 500 wool shedding ewes, and again, they lamb outside from about the 20th of April. So a little bit of what's going on there for us is we get the first cycle of calving out of the way before we start lambing. But again, with lambing, it's quite a light touch. We're pretty much just sorting out welfare cases. That's the idea. So they lamb then, rotationally grazed from 2 or 3 weeks old, and lambs will be weaned in August, and we'll sell lambs, prime lambs through August, September, October. Whatever's left at the beginning of November will go store. Some years that's almost none, other years it's a few more. And we also sell ewe lambs for breeding. So that's the sheep system in a nutshell. Outwintering, we outwinter all the stock. It's a point of advantage for us in many respects. We're on dry, stony soils, so we can get away with it. Obviously, this is a little bit more extreme when it's snowy and what have you, but that's fine. till relatively recently, when we had Storm Arwen, we had very good shelter on the farm with woods and such like. That's a little bit more limiting now, but we've just got to be a little bit more creative with our thinking there. But broadly speaking, cows they'll be in a sacrifice area getting fed silage from the end of November through till the start of calving in April. We also, on the farm, have quite a big commitment to rural stewardship. So we've got significant areas of native grassland, species-rich grassland. A lot of hedgerows have been planted over the years, and watercourses fenced off and that sort of thing. I think overall, just over 40% of the farm has some form of stewardship measure on it, just to give you an indication. We've tried to integrate that with the farming system in quite a big way. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a feel for what our resources are and how we're trying to farm the place. What things are we recording through the year, and what is important to us? I'll put it up there right at the beginning. I don't like recording.
Charley's rubbish at it. It's a pet hate.
Yeah.
All my
it's good that we work as a team on that thing, but I like the results of recording. I like what you can do with the information that you generate. I've also been the other way and tried and recorded far too much and actually not done anything with it. So one of the big things I would stress is it's what you do with the data that you record. There's always recording it, but if you don't use it or you use it in the wrong way, it's counterproductive.
And it's absolutely exhausting when you produce that much. And just absolute brain fry. Yeah. So we have to be quite selective, but that's just us working with our strengths and weaknesses. Yeah. Or his weaknesses, my strengths, maybe.
Well, I've been told I didn't have the temperament for recording a lot of things. No. But we're not recording on the level that some of the pedigree breeders, and I think Neil might be on now if he hasn't disappeared to watch the rugby. We're not going to that level because that's not our thing, but we absolutely buy into that performance recording that people that are selling bulls and rams do. But that's what we're buying when we go and buy rams or bulls. That's all the effort they put in. So what are we recording that's really important for our commercial sort of setup? We're going through the year, and Jack's already alluded to it, having a tight calving pattern. Well, our feeling is very strongly it's dead easy to have a tight calving pattern. You just have to have a tight bulling pattern and fetch the bulls out. And arguably, and maybe slightly controversially, but the most important day of the year to me is the day that you fetch the bulls back in from being with the cows, because that's the cutoff of calving. So we only bull for just under 7 weeks. It's usually 6 weeks and 5 days, unless it falls on an inconvenient day. But let's say 7 weeks for round figures. And we accept that in some years we'll have 1 or 2 more empties than we might like. Latterly, we've been getting on very well with it, getting good. I think it was 93% last year in calf in that period. It has been lower. It's been down in the 80s, and there's been a little bit of disappointment there. But it makes such a difference to having a tight thing. If not only from our own point of view of being busy with calving for 7, maybe 8 weeks, if there's a little bit of spread there in terms of gestation length. So I think that's a key one, is to actually fetch the blinking bulls in. It's dead easy to have a tight calving pattern, but it may not be that there's many cows in calves as you want. But it fell into our hands a little bit one year when everything we were on a 9-week bulling and everything had calved within 7 weeks, and we kind of thought, well, if we're not going to, that was absolutely the year to make the change and give it a try, and it's worked pretty well for us over the years, very well, and particularly in view of calving ending in mid-May and moving on. So tight bulling pattern, not a term you hear very often, but very important in our view. Rolling through to obviously bull the cows, that's back in June, July. We don't actually scan, we have scanned in October before, but because we don't wean until January, that can be a bigger task than you might want it to be. So we've tended now to going back to doing our pregnancy scanning and the health scheme tests in January, not long after Christmas. And that's where obviously we capture a lot of data there in terms of who's in calf and who isn't, the obvious ones, but we're also on the lookout for cows that perhaps aren't wintering as well as others. If anybody's leaner, I should point out, we run the cows as a single mob as much as we possibly can. We don't give preferential to heifers or first calvers. Everybody runs as a mob, and you make your way in the mob or not, as the case may be. So at this point in the year, we are looking for cattle that are not performing. So we're conditioned. If I say we're conditioned to going, that's probably over-egging the pudding. But we're looking for cows that aren't doing, or heifers that aren't doing, for that matter, at this point. And we might, at this point, make a separate group of, 15 or 20. We haven't needed to the last 2 or 3 years, but we're on the lookout for that if necessary. So that's January and all that.
We don't actually do very much different with those. It just we just put them in a separate field, so they've just got a feeder that they don't have to cope with the big bully cows. It just seems to make enough difference to do that. We don't hard feed them.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Because and I think possibly that the reason we haven't had to separate as many is because we have got sort of quite a bit extra feed space when we're out wintering with those feed trailers. There's plenty of room for stock to get in and get a good feed. So but hopefully that's paying off in terms of not needing to pull the bottom end out. Calving is, as stated previously, from the 1st of April through to the 15th of May. That sounds very precise, but often the first calf's obviously a week before that, as Jack was alluding to, and sometimes you get one that drifts on beyond then, but that's the calving period as planned. And as they calve, maybe the second or third time you see the calf
second
is when we pick them up. If
the
weather's all right, yeah. So pick them up, pop them in the trailer, and this is when we are doing some of our recording in terms of, well, I think some of this is for the government beef proficiency scheme, but we've got, you can see on the right, that's our little group chat that we set up between 3 or 4 of us. If the kids are home, they get included in the group chat. So whoever goes to the calving field, in theory, knows what's going on, and you put down the cow number when you see it, and then obviously as we tag it, you can see there's 689 has 312. B for bull, M for it's medium sized, and 3 is if there are 3, they're following the calf in the trailer like this, absolutely fine, but they're not trying to join you in the trailer, and nor are they apathetic about following you. So that, by the way, is a Simmental cross Welsh Black. Just to throw a curveball in, having said we're Welsh Black and Angus, but yeah, there we go.
She's mine. I'm sorry. Yeah. Brown ones. It's mine.
So that's what's going on there, and we find that very useful because that is a record we can all refer back to it at any point. And obviously we're recording this and registering calves on the system as everybody else will be. But this is what we have found to work really well for us on the ground in all weathers.
And I think I should just add at this point, this calving group chat that we set up, it's obviously used by all of us, but we keep it really clean. Nothing, no comments in there about anything other than calving, so that it's really easy to check back. And if you see that number, if it's a 3 or a 3+, you're fine. If it's a 4, when I'm doing all of the recording when I get back, so that cow will get a watch against her ready for next year, because if she's a 4, we're a little bit concerned that she might turn into a 5. And if she's a 5 on this group chat, she never even goes to the big group. She goes straight to the cull field, because Charlie's got a really short memory, really short. And it means that that cow, if she's a 5, if she's trying to kill one of us, then she gets a 5 and she never sees the bull again. So that we can be categoric that we are not going to be killed by a cow that we know has got previous. And Charlie's short memory, he's always like, oh, it wasn't that bad. When the reality is, it was. If she gets a 5, she's gone.
Yeah.
And that is it and all about it, because we are too important to risk that cow going, oh no, it was just a bad day.
Yeah.
4 we can accept, 5 absolutely not.
Yeah, and to be fair, we don't get many of those now. We did 15 years ago, we were probably getting quite a few of them, but because of Andrea's policy of getting rid of it and convincing me to get rid of everything, not give it an excuse, we seem to have got into a good place there. I mean, as you see, there's one up there near the top that got called a starry-eyed snorter, and there's a 4+.
You chose that speech.
That was living on the edge. That one is, if that repeated it this year, she'd be gone.
Well, do you know what the funny thing about that is? When that cow calved this year, I remembered her, and I was like, oh my goodness, it's a starry-eyed snorter. And she literally just big eyes staring and snorts at you. she's not aggressive particularly. She just looks like she might be.
Just scared you. Yeah. Good. Right. Enough of the stereotypes.
Sorry. Yeah.
No. So the other thing that we're measuring quite a bit, and probably again, we probably haven't been doing enough of this over the years, but we feel that the last couple of years we've been getting a weight generally October, November, because we're not actually weaning at that point. It's really useful though to get a weight at that point, so we know how the calf has done on mum. So that reflects on mum's performance as well. And also then when we do weigh in January at weaning, we're getting a reflection of how they're doing that winter. And again, the calf group at weaning, it'll probably be one big group for a week or two. But if there's a bit of a tail there, they might get separated out and be given a bit of preferential grass. Well, when I say preferential, rarely ever anything gets hard feed on our place. It tends to just get fed separately, so there's less competition. But again, I think with more feed space on the silage feeders and what have you, I think there's absolutely almost zero competition in that sense. So we go again in January at weaning, obviously weigh then, that's helping us. But we're looking very hard at that growth rate between November and January. And then again in March, and this isn't religious, this is best case. Some years, if it's been bad weather or whatever, we might have missed one of these weighings, but this is what we aspire to, and we'll get them. But that March one can be key. Again, I've spoiled stock before in March when you think you're about to graze and it's everything else, and you're holding them on some maybe not brilliant tuckus and not brilliant silage, or you're on grazing but sort of doing a bit of pretend grazing when it's not really enough. So I think that's really important. We've picked up, like this last year, actually March to May, we were off the pace with our young stock because I'd hit that point where I thought they should be grazing, but actually we hadn't quite got enough built up, so they weren't really on the best stuff.
The other thing we should say about measuring the calf growth, we're not just measuring the calf growth when they're coming through the yards, we're also assessing their temperament. So when they're coming through, so I'm actually stood in the weigh cell part of the race there. So we never catch the calves. We don't have to catch them to weigh them. We literally just shut them in that little section. And we like them to have like a soft run through so that nothing nasty happens to them. They're literally just weighed. But when they're going through, if we get one that is really, really panicky, we'll absolutely make a note against that so that we're watching it next time it comes through to see if it is a panicky one or if it's actually just had a bad day, had a bit of a fright, got left on its own or something. So we're constantly tracking them through the system and assessing their temperament, because the last thing we want to do when we're sending a heifer for breeding to somebody else is for them to end up with a stereo-eyed slaughter. So that, for me, really helps us sort of breeding the type of cow that we like. Yeah,
you're very good at keeping an eye on that sort of thing, I mean, noting it as they come through. And that, just as an aside, that might be the biggest bird's nest in Berwickshire, we reckon.
It was huge.
And on the floor, but anyway, it's not a straw. Yeah, so those are our weighings. We don't weigh in the summer at all because it doesn't make an awful lot of difference to what we're doing. We're trying to do the best for the stock that we possibly can. There's an argument for it, but it's a handling that we're happy to leave out May to November. That's absolutely fine.
But we should also say we do actually weigh our cows occasionally, not all of them all the time.
Yeah.
So we do have a good representative weight of what our cows actually do weigh. We don't just say, oh yeah, they're about 650, when actually they're more like 800. Yeah. So
and they are 650. They really are. Well, 655 last time we weighed everybody, but we've one or two outliers above and below that. So
might or might not be my semi-cross.
Yeah. Good. Well, we'll move on.
Yeah,
what was the next? Oh, well, this is the thing. This is where it all happens, really. This was just to point out that it was something that I realised I was doing, and I can get a bit agitated when we're outside working with the stock and you're trying to make decisions on the spot and things. And Andrew's been quite good at kind of instilling a bit of discipline, and we'll actually have a powwow a few times through the year, but particularly in the winter when maybe the office looks like a much more attractive place than a hillside. And it really helps because, we'll go through stuff sometimes quite exhaustively, but looking at who's performing and who's not, or who has been performing, which cows have done their calves well that year and which haven't. And that's kind of setting us up for the spring, so that when we're actually taking those cows and calves out of the calving field with their calf, that might dictate which field they're going to as to whether they're sticking around or not, and all that sort of thing. So there's a lot of that going on, and the same when we're selecting our heifers for breeding and that sort of thing as well. So we're doing a lot of it here in the office. I mean, obviously you've got to see the stock, but sometimes if you've got this background information on the sheet when you go to look at the stock, then you're well ahead of the game when you get there. So we found that really works nicely for us. Good. So yeah, just wanted to recap really that that tight calving period is really important, but we've got tight. The only way we're going to get that is with a tight bulling, and I know there's other things that have to fit into that to make sure that you've got a sensible number of cows and heifers and calf. But that is the number one thing for us in the sequence of events, as it were. And you follow that through and have a tight calving period. Obviously, we talked about that and how we achieve that. And that makes a big difference for us. You know, not least, you've got a higher average calf weight because they tend to be slightly older than if they were calving over 9 weeks. And your cows have got a longer time to recover, should they need to, between calving and bulling. So they've got plenty of time on that lovely May, June grass to pack some meat on and get back in calf. So that's really important to us in that respect. And then measuring the calf growth and getting at least 3, but ideally all 4 of these weights through the year, which really helps us track things. And the story we wanted to link into here was, and I'll go on to the next slide, is being able to calve heifers at 2 years old. Now we were not getting enough heifers up to weight to be able to calve sensibly at 2 years old. We were calving a few at 2 years old and having to let quite a few others run round to 3 years old. And we increased the herd sort of over the last 4 or 5 years from about 70 cows up to 110 to the bull. So obviously we're dead keen to get heifers into the herd, but we weren't doing well enough. And it was something that we had to try and put our finger on. Where can we make a difference, or where's the shortfall? And one of the big ones, and we only found it really we suspected it, but by weighing at those times, we were sussing that, you know, we were getting growth in the winter. Some of the calves they were doing fine, and if we're averaging 0.4 in the winter, and we've got some at 0.6, then by definition you're more likely got some at 0.2, and that just simply wasn't enough. And I think it was probably holding stock back longer term as well. So we really identified that as a weakness in our system and went after it. And with those 3, maybe 4 weighings through November through May, that was really helping us get on track where we were getting it right and where we were getting it wrong. And I knew some years, you know, you got a feeling, but equally when you got the weights, that really helped tell what was going on. And obviously, you know, calving at 2 years old was a big thing in lifting our output, because we've got the extra calves that you've got from those heifers calving anyway, but you've also got extra selection pressure on the heifers because they're getting to calve, and if there's something that comes out that, you know, needs assistance or whatever, well, we'll not be keeping that. And also it's helping to keep the mature size down somewhat, you know, just by virtue of them calving as a 2-year-old. So I think that was the big success story probably that helped drive our beef performance most of all. And obviously once you're weighing, there's lots of other follow-on benefits, you know, in the steers as well. They were up to better weights and what have you. But that really helped us drive performance. And I'll put the next one up, scare you with a little graph, but it's this was our track through, well, nearly 10 years worth, and it's a little bit out of date, so my apologies, but it just shows you how we lifted the output per hectare. Now that wasn't all by calving heifers at 2, having weighed some cattle. There was a lot of other things going on in here, not least going into rotational paddock grazing, what have you. But it was just, you know, when you're going into something new like that, like paddock grazing, having weights of cattle, weights of lambs, and all that sort of stuff, really helped us to get a handle on what we were doing. And we started off doing it, we were being too hard on the stock to get the grass right and that sort of thing. So that it was a really good, you know, it gave us a really good read, and you could see over the years as well how much the beef side of things, which is in red, has become a bigger portion of that. Now, again, that's not all output per cow going up. That is because we've got more cattle, but it's really driven performance and helped us get in a really what we feel is a really strong place, and we've got good tools in place, and we know where we want to be in the year with different target weights and what have you to get those heifers up to weight for bulling, and obviously to get steers heavier for when they go away to be found. So try not to be the guy wondering what has happened. Watch what's happening. I think that's really important, but really just go and make things happen. Thank you very much.
That's brilliant. No, thanks, Charlie and Andrea. That's yeah, for a great chat through your system and what you're doing, and ending on that note of challenge. We're open to kind of questions now. So if anyone wants to speak, you can put your hand up and I can allow you to talk to field a question through, or alternatively stick it in the Q&A box, and we can get some answers here from Charlie and Andrea. So I just have a question, just coming back. So what you were saying about how you're rearing your heifers, so you're not managing them as a separate mob. They've got to find their place in the herd, as you put it, with the main. And what made you make that decision? Because yeah, it's interesting well, obviously you've seen it work in your output, but what was your decision making around that?
I think the first thing was having been overseas, and there was one instance in particular, but a whole series of them, where I had Australians in particular questioning, but how are you putting selection pressure on if you're not going to run them in the system, you're going to run them in for a lifetime? And I understand it's a bit radical. I think there are things in our system that allow it to work better. We're all outwintered, you know, the herd is going to be outwintered, 100 odd cows in 20 something acres, with lots of feed trailers. I think that's really important, that there's plenty of feed space.
And also we separate some of the feeders. So if there's more shy ones, then we'll put feeders across the other side of the field, so that they don't have to face the mob if they don't want to. They can select the feeder that boss isn't feeding at, you know.
Yeah, another aspect would be that we feed in the winter. We'll feed Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you put enough feed out, obviously, for 48 hours or 72 at the weekend, sort of thing. But and I know that again, that's slightly counterintuitive to when you're feeding up a feed passage in a shed. But what that's doing is it means there's plenty there for everybody. Everybody can get some good stuff. And on short day two, it's kind of the same for everybody, if that makes sense. It also gives us a bit of space to actually do some other things on the other days, which is good.
Which will lead a follower, in fact.
Oh yes, for the calves they'll be actually creeping through a gate in the wintering system from one field to another. When they're getting fed silage in there, but they also get a bit of strip grazed grass. But we do a kind of leader follower with the feed trailers there, so they get the fresh best silage, but we never make them clear up. We always drag their feeders back through to the cows for them to clear up and put fresh in for them. So little things like that have all helped us to mitigate that to some extent. And as I say, we'll be absolutely prepared to make a subgroup if we need to. But our ethos, our whole philosophy is driven at they've got to perform in the system.
And also, one thing we found with keeping the heifers with the cows, they learn the system better. So that when we actually start calving, it's really, really interesting. The heifers come and watch, and they come. So sometimes you'll get a heifer escort of the cows out of the field as you're turning the cow and calf out. And she's so interested, and she sees the system and she learns the system. So it's not scary when you're grabbing a calf, putting it in the trailer. So we're big fans of using the herd system for them to learn and for them to be relaxed within the system.
Yeah, no, I like it. It's different, and it's clearly working. I'm just going to fly through some of the questions that have come through the group here. So, question from Daniel Stout: what are your target weights / growth rates for calves at these points? So,
I thought Daniel would ask that, so I've done some maths. So off the top of my head, we're looking at 1.1, 1.15 for the calf on mum through till October, November. And then we want everybody to be at least all the calves to be at least 0.4 through the winter. So that's probably realistically, that's an average of 0.5-ish. But otherwise you've got too many dropping below it. And what are we starting with? A 35, 40 kilo calf. So that's doing the maths, a couple of 100 kilos through till sort of late October, I think that is, plus the 35 or 40 that they were born with is 240s. And then another, let's say another 60 odd kilos through to mid-March. So whatever that works out to, about 300, isn't it? Yeah. So that's that. And then another thing we identified, we really want to try very hard to get calves in particular onto grass in March if we can. But as I say, like this year, I kind of jumped the gun. I thought we were off, and then we weren't. And then I've actually got a whole load of ewes that aren't too far off lambing, so they became priority. And that's one I take that on the chin. But that was it was an area when we were looking at when we started weighing, we realised that March, April, for all that you think, yeah, we're going to graze now, we'd actually been missing a trick a lot of years. Now this year past, I possibly couldn't have done much differently, but I'm sure there are years previous when I definitely could have done. So that helped us a lot and made me realise how important that is.
Yeah, no, thanks for talking us through those numbers. So not related, but we've got a question from Andy here. So how do you avoid inbreeding with these large mobs that you've got?
We prefer to call it line breeding. No, we don't. Is the long and the short of it. I do believe if Robert Bakewell does it, it is called line breeding, and Charley Walker does it, it's inbreeding. And I know that's not quite true because they were trying to achieve things with that. But the simple fact is, we have a 110 cow group with 3 bulls in there. Obviously, there's a degree of dilution, but we're not going to pretend that there isn't some crossover there. We're bringing new bulls in reasonably regularly, but I'm not going to pretend that we are avoiding inbreeding. It will be a factor, but not in a big enough way for it to trouble us at this stage, certainly. I feel that the benefits of it, and I don't mean this just purely in management terms, I think also in breeding terms. We're breeding cattle that perform in our system on our farm, and I think that's a huge factor in that. And also, it makes the management so much easier and lets us develop some real grazing pressure. It's a big win for us. I appreciate that can't be done for everybody. If you're in a pedigree situation, what have you.
Yep. So question from Neil. Can you explain why you don't wean until January? Early weaning.
Yes, you might start a domestic argument here because I would wean until February. Last year we left it till February. No, the thinking behind that is we're an outwintered system, and we used to wean in November when many people that calve when we do would do. I think wean probably into a shed. So we used to wean then, and it worked okay, but the calves, found on an outwintered system, we felt certainly the calves could get knocked around a bit through the winter. They're on their own, they're maybe not ever so big, and they've got some shelter, but it still fairly knocks the stuffing out of them. But the truth is, if there was any class of stock we would put in a shed from everything that we currently have, probably weaned calves would be the one that would end up in a shed at some point towards Christmas. But so there was a feeling, and this was born out of some research stuff done in New Zealand as well, that in some systems a calf left on a cow is getting a benefit above and beyond merely the nutrition of the milk, which is not getting an awful lot of by that point. So A, there's a comfort factor. B, there is on a mucky night in December, the calf's lying tucked up next to a 650 kilogram radiator sort of thing, which is a bit different to being stood with a bunch of mates in the corner of a paddock somewhere else. So that is the thinking, and we've pushed it way out to February, but felt that was probably a bit too far. But you're probably going to jump in because we should explain that although we don't wean until then, we do, and I think I've mentioned it possibly, we let the calves, when the cows go into their sacrifice field in November, end of November, the calves will have a creep gate through to the next field, and we'll have saved up grass there, or even we sow a 1 year lay quite often for them, and they will strip graze that. Now we'll find that within a week we've got 10 or 12 calves going through. Within a couple of weeks you've got 30, 40, maybe 50, and we get up to sort of within about 3 weeks we get up to about 60, 70% of them going through. We feel that some of them never go through. There's about, and we haven't done this scientifically, we're going off observation and anecdote, so yeah, there's no real trials behind this, but there are some that just stay with mum, and so they don't go through and they don't get the best grub, and that's why we wean in January. So I actually answered the question topsy-turvy, we wean later, but we wean early in for where we're at now. We have been and weaned in October. A couple of years we did that, and 1 year it was quite good, but it was quite a kind year. They had lots of good grass going through the autumn, and I think the winter was kind. The second year we did it, it didn't work very well at all, did it? And we'd underdone stock. And, you know, maybe we could have given that more of a try, but we're more comfortable with the calf on the cow until the other side of Christmas at least.
And also our cows, they tend to hold on to their condition very well. So in many ways, there's not really too much pressure to take that calf off. We're not doing cow any favours. In fact, we're probably making her fatter than we would like. I mean, they're always fit at calving anyway, so it's not really a problem what conditional score the cows are. But she may as well be milking a bit for that calf until the January, because it makes no difference to her. But yeah, I choose that we wean January. That's
probably the strongest point. It was me rambling on for ages, and Andrea just nailed it with that. You know, we have got a type of cow that, you know, it's more like me than some other people. It gets fat and fresh air and scenery. You know, they do keep condition pretty well. So.
Yeah, no, that's great. No, thanks for explaining that. That was going to be my question on body condition scoring. So no, they hold their condition well. So no, that makes sense. Daniel's put in a question here. Do you have a minimum and maximum cow weight that you would cull at, or not retain heifers from?
But we should say absolutely yes. But being as we've kept that little line of Simmental cross cows from a 900 kilo cow, but yeah. The bulk of it, we'll call that the pet herd or the pack herd or whatever, but the bulk of them, yeah, no, I don't know. I think anything over 800 would definitely be not looked at favourably. Yeah. As a minimum weight, yeah, I feel that we want the herd average to be, well, we want it to be 650, and we want them to all be between 645 and 655, but of course that isn't reality. But I'd be reticent about getting too much smaller, just simply from a point of view of you know, finishing animals going forward. I know that other countries have a lot smaller cows than we do here, and it's quite interesting. But until the weight specs would change down the way, I think is it 240 dead weight still? Perhaps I'm not sure, but that would be the slight concern we might have in that area.
Just a question for me on the cows. You're saying you got a 93% calving in this year percentage. Are you pelvic scoring? Are you select easy? I mean, when you say you're out, everything's calved outside. How much of intervention are you doing here? Is it a few percent? Is it a few cow? What is it?
Some years we don't assist any to calve.
The last 3 years we haven't.
Yeah, we've given assistance, you know, where something's sick or it hasn't got on the teat or that sort of thing, but we've not had to help it in the calf. Put a lot of that down to feeding reasonably well in the winter. Our cows, most people would come to us a month before calving, would have collywobbles at how fit and fat our cows are. Because they would think that we're going to get a lot of calving problems. But I think wandering around a 20-acre field is a very different kettle of fish to being in a pen. And I'm not criticising being in a pen. There's a lot of advantages to that too. We don't have precision feeding in that sense. So I think that's a factor. I also think we're on the right track genetics, and the bulls that we're using, you know, we've got breeders that are breeding for easy calving and for easy fleshing. I think that's quite important as well. But so, and no, we don't do any pelvic measuring or anything. It's if you've needed assistance to calve, we're not going to keep you, and we're not going to keep the heifer calf off them either. Sort of.
Yeah. No, thanks for talking that through. Do you know, that's been like perfect timing. That's been like spot on the hour. So that's pretty good. I've got one last question from Neil, and I don't know if you can see this, but I'll just read it out. Someone explained to me once that recording all the information I heard is like trying to fill a bucket of water with a hole in the bottom. If your bull breeder isn't doing the same, how do you think you keep making progress? Yeah, so good.
I think this is going to make Neil feel we rely on the likes of Neil and Debbie and other breeders like keeping on. But I absolutely agree that it's about choosing a bull or a ram or any other, you know, male stock is far more about choosing the breeder than it is choosing which one you go for once you get up that farm road. It's choosing which farm road to go up and finding somebody that is pushing on and has got a system that's aligned with yours and hopefully ahead of yours, so that you're chasing that increase. But I think that's really, really important, and we're very happy to buy into people that are putting all that extra effort into recording in genetic performance recording in great detail.
No, it's a great point from me. I mean, the bull is 50% of your genetics. Absolutely. So when you're going for bull selection, then what are you looking at figures, or are you more thinking of what's off grass? What's your criteria then for?
Well, we've actually used the same bull breeder for the last nearly 10 years, haven't we? Who's which is Black Hawk Angus, Andrew Elliott's Black Hawk Angus, and the first 2 or 3 years we used them, we made some management changes as well, but the things went so well for us. I used to go to meetings and you'd see target carbon percentages put up and target assists put up. And I don't think we were terrible before, but you sometimes used to look at some people's figures and think that can't be true. And we'd had we got into change things around a bit, change the bulls we were using, and we got within 2 or 3 years we were blown away. Really, it was really working well. So we've stuck with that. And obviously we vary the genetic lines, and Andrew's bringing in different genetics and things. But that's worked really well for us. He's a higher farm than we are. He's not pushing a lot of hard feed into stock. These are the sort of key things that we feel are important. But when it comes down to figures, we're looking at easy fleshing. That's not actually a figure, is it? But fat. I want things to be fat rather than lean, because I think that helps A, to get finish on stock, but B, in it for our bit of the system, for cows to outwinter and to really get some nick on to carry them through the winter, to do what nature set them up to do for the last 10,000 years or whatever. So the easy calving, easy fleshing in form fat, and good growth as well is important, but is not the be all and end all. A live calf on the ground and a cow that's easy to look after is. Andrew is going to say something more sensible, perhaps. Does that cover it?
No, we like these small streamlined calves that come flying out, but then as soon as they hit the deck, they just grow, and that is what we've got right now.
Yeah. And I think we're not. Well, I mean, we do appear to be a slave to one bull breeder, but that's because we've found what we like and it's working well. But I know there are other, there's a good range of people that are doing much more of the sort of forage-based or pasture-based systems.
But we might need to look elsewhere at some point, because we used to be Welsh Black and we put Angus over them. So we had the hybrid figure, we had that uplift from that. And now we're getting really quite Angus. So we've already started to think about next steps and where we might go forwards. But we're not really a slave to it, because we are.
No, we're not.
Sorry, Andrew.
No, that's great. I'm just going to launch a poll just now, just as we bring this webinar to a close. There'll be the usual email that gets sent around in your email inboxes tomorrow morning, just to give comments about today's meeting and what you've gained from it. Really appreciate if you could do that survey when it pops around. It literally takes 2 seconds. But I think every month there's a prize draw for a hamper, so you could win that. But and then that just kind of leaves me to just finally put up some. I'll just share my screen here, if this will let me, and to say about our next meetings. So we've got flock level management, 25th of October, so you can put that date in your diary. We've got Daniel Stout and Angus Nellis talking us through his system there, and they'll also be coming together for the breeding sheep selection. And then the finishing cattle, Robert Ramsey will be on for this one, with a big finisher that I can't say just yet because it needs to be confirmed, but you can save this date in your diary if you want to join on for the next meeting on data-driven decision making. But unless there's any more questions, thank you very much for joining this webinar, and thanks, Charlie and Andrea. You've been great. It's really appreciate getting an insight into your system and the level of detail you've got about the business and how you're doing that to make these changes and strive for success. So thank you very much. And unless there's anything else, good night, and you can get back to the rugby. And thanks for joining us.
Enjoy the rugby, Neil.
Yeah, no worries.
Oh, brilliant.
Okay. No, thanks very much. We'll just end the webinar now. Cheers.